There is one rule on The Muppet Show that nobody ever wrote down. No handbook, no contract clause, no memo from Jim Henson pinned to the dressing room door, but every single guest star who ever walked through that stage door either understood it instinctively or didn't. And the ones who didn't, the audience felt it every time. The rule is simple. The Muppets are real. Not props, not costumes, not a quirky backdrop for your greatest hits. Real. Today we're going through 10 of them. 5 who got it completely right, 5 who didn't, and at the very end, one name that somehow ended up on both lists at the same time. Loved number 5, Madeline Kahn. Madeline Kahn walked into the Muppet Theater and immediately complimented Gonzo. That sounds small. It wasn't. In the episodes leading up to this one, Gonzo ate tires to the music of Flight of the Bumblebee, caught cannonballs, and performed avant-garde stunts to empty applause. Nobody complimented Gonzo, ever. So when Madeline Kahn looked at him backstage and told him she thought he was terrific, Gonzo fell completely in love with her. He spent the rest of the episode trying to propose marriage, abandoning his other commitments, and generally losing his mind over a woman who had simply been kind to him. That is the Muppet Show working exactly as it was designed. She didn't perform at the Muppets. She walked into their reality and lived in it. The episode has since been called one of the densest collections of classic Muppet moments in the entire series, not because of anything Kahn did on stage, but because of what she did backstage. She made Gonzo feel seen, and Gonzo never forgets that. Hated number 5, Joan Baez. Joan Baez was one of the most important artists of the 20th century. Her voice was flawless, her conviction was real, and her episode is one of the most uncomfortable half hours in the entire run of the show. Because Baez didn't come to play, she came to say something. Jim Henson built this show on anarchic vaudeville energy, pure chaos barely held together by a nervous frog. When a guest star walks in and treats that stage as a podium, the format pushes back. Fans described the episode independently without coordinating, using the same word over and over, preachy. When your message matters more to you than the Muppets become furniture. Baez's music was beautiful, but the Muppet Theater is not a lecture hall, and the audience knew it. Loved number 4, Gilda Radner. Gilda Radner arrived at the theater with a specific request, a 7-foot-tall talking parrot. What she got by deliberate design of the writers was a 7-foot-tall talking carrot. Jim Henson later said of the joke, "It's a terrible joke, but it's worthy of us." What followed was Radner performing operetta with a giant vegetable, and she didn't flinch. She leaned in completely, matched the carrot's energy, and played it like it was exactly what she had wanted all along. Then Dr. Bunsen Honeydew's experimental super glue got everywhere. Radner ended up physically chained to Beaker, the two of them connected by a muscle-building chest expander, neither able to move without pulling the other along. Beaker could only meep. Radner improvised through the entire scene as if this was completely normal. That is not a small thing. Beaker is a character who communicates exclusively through panic and squeaking. To play a scene with him, really play it, not just stand next to him, requires a specific kind of presence. Radner had it completely. She came from Saturday Night Live. She understood that the performance is the reality. You don't step outside it to wink at the camera, you stay in, no matter what gets glued to you. Hated number 4, Bruce Forsyth. The word Muppet fans use for Bruce Forsyth is not bad. It's not boring, it's phony. That is a specific and devastating word when applied to a guest star on this show. Forsyth was the biggest name in British entertainment television at the time. He knew every trick in the variety show playbook. His timing was immaculate. His grin was permanent. And that was precisely the problem. Watch him counter Statler and Waldorf. He fires back instantly with rehearsed celebrity roast lines, shuts them down, wins the exchange. It should be satisfying. Instead, it feels like watching a machine run a program. Because next to Statler and Waldorf, two old men who genuinely cannot help themselves, a perfectly calibrated comeback lands as hollow. The Muppets don't lie. Their emotion is unedited. Fozzie's humiliation is real, Animal's ecstasy is real, Gonzo's desperation is real, and when a guest star walks in with every gesture pre-planned and every reaction on cue, the contrast is immediate. You can feel the difference between a performer who is present and one who is performing being present. Forsyth was performing being present. Loved. Number 3. Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly came to the Muppet Show with one condition: no singing in the rain. His most famous moment, his signature number, he didn't want to touch it. He told the writers that before he even agreed to appear. And when he arrived, he planned to watch from the wings, not perform, just watch. The writers turned his refusal into the entire episode. Kermit spends the whole show trying to coax him into something, anything. At one point, Kelly offered to give Kermit a dance lesson. Kelly asked where they might do it. Kermit said, "Over there," and Kelly walked over there, and the lights came up, and the audience was in front of him, and by then it was too late. He performs a number, but Singin' in the Rain stays off the table, until Rolf sits down at the piano and simply begins to play the opening notes. And Gene Kelly, in his late 60s, starts to sing. A medley first, other songs, other memories, and then, almost without deciding to, he dances just a little, just enough. The Muppets didn't get him there by asking. They got him there by starting without him. Hated. Number 3, Anne Murray. Anne Murray had one of the great voices of her generation. Her material was polished, her performances technically clean. But there is a difference between a singer and a presence. Watch her backstage scenes. Watch her talk to Kermit. There is something absent, a vacancy, like the camera caught her between takes on a different show entirely. Fans put it plainly and precisely. Her singing was great, her acting was not. The Muppets don't need you to be a trained actor. They need you to believe, just for 30 minutes, that the frog is real, that the bear's feelings are real, that the argument backstage actually matters. Murray sang beautifully into a theater she never quite entered. Loved. Number 2, Rita Moreno. Jim Henson had taped 4 episodes before he taped this one, but when The Muppet Show premiered in New York in September 1976, this was the episode he chose to air first. Not because it was first, but because Rita Moreno was in it, and he knew what that meant. She had agreed to appear before the show had proven anything. Her name opened doors at television stations that might otherwise have said no to a puppet variety show. She wasn't just a guest star, she was the argument for why the show deserved to exist. Then she performed the Apache dance, throwing a full-bodied Muppet partner around the stage like a rag doll, keeping the physical comedy seamless across dozens of breaks to get the costume in and out. Then Sweetums fell in love with her and carried her bodily off the stage mid-conversation. She didn't flinch. And then came Fever. She demanded that Animal actually interrupt her physically, genuinely. She stopped the number mid-performance to address him directly, in Spanish. "If you bother me anymore, I'm gonna hit you so hard it's gonna leave you stupid." 3 years later, she won the Emmy for that appearance on a puppet show because she treated it like the most important performance of her career, because it was. Hated. Number 2, Debbie Harry. This entry requires the most care because Debbie Harry was not bad on The Muppet Show. Her musical performances were extraordinary, chased through the set by monsters during One Way or Another, backed by a Muppet punk band dressed in the exact aesthetic of the Parallel Lines album. She was unmistakably herself. She also taught Robin the Frog and his scout troop how to earn their punk merit badge, how to pogo, how to wear a safety pin. By the end of the episode, their troop leader, Mrs. Appleby, had become the safety pin queen. In 1980, that was genuinely radical television, and she and Kermit performed Rainbow Connection together, the only time that song appeared in the entire run of the show. There is a real sweetness in that duet. It works. But then the music stopped, and something changed. Compare her to Alice Cooper 3 seasons earlier. Cooper walked into the theater and immediately told Scooter that the monsters in his dressing room weren't the Muppet Show's. They were his. He conspired with them. He offered the Muppets' souls to the devil in exchange for worldwide fame. He did all of this while remaining unmistakably entirely himself, just with the ratio of creepiness to comedy slightly adjusted for the room. When Debbie Harry had to deliver scripted lines, interact with Pops at the stage door, respond to backstage chaos, something went quiet behind her eyes. Fans described it precisely: a little stiff interacting with puppets. Not believable as herself. That is not an insult to her talent. It is a description of the specific failure mode this show exposed in guest stars who could perform brilliantly but never quite arrived in the room. The Muppets gave her everything. She gave them a very good set. Loved. Number 1, Buddy Rich. Backstage, before the drum battle, Floyd Pepper walked Animal past Buddy Rich on a chain. Rich looked at him and said, matter-of-factly, all drummers are animals. He had no idea how right he was. Buddy Rich was not a gentle man. His temper was legendary. His bandmates secretly recorded his backstage outbursts, recordings that circulated for years, filled with profanity-laden tirades about sloppy playing and unshaven faces. The Beastie Boys referenced him in a lyric, "I'm Buddy Rich when I fly off the handle." The Oscar-winning film Whiplash modeled its central character on him. He held a black belt in karate. He played with Tommy Dorsey, Harry James, Count Basie. He was billed, without much argument, as the world's greatest drummer. His favorite song was "It's Not Easy Being Green." When Buddy Rich sat down across from Animal, he saw a creature of pure percussion instinct, no technique, no restraint, just noise and fury and a complete absence of self-control, the opposite of everything Rich stood for professionally. And he played. They went back and forth. Rich was technically flawless, Animal matched him beat for beat, and then when it was over, Animal stared, just for a moment, acknowledging something he couldn't match, and then he threw a snare drum onto Buddy Rich's head, because even in defeat, Animal is Animal. Animal's side of the battle was performed by a real session drummer named Ronnie Verrill, Rich's own idol. Rich knew exactly who he was playing against. He later said that playing opposite Verrill was a total gas to me. That one week will go down as one of the most positive weeks in my career. The world's most demanding drummer on a puppet show calling it the best week of his professional life. Same rule, different instruments. Hated. Number 1, Jonathan Winters. Before the taping, Jonathan Winters told the Muppet Show crew that he believed a gypsy curse had been placed on the theater. Kermit dismissed it. Then the props broke. The numbers fell apart. A meteorite landed on Kermit's flipper. This is how a Jonathan Winters episode works. He doesn't enter your reality, you enter his. Winters improvised over the Muppets, around them, through them. His energy was enormous and entirely self-contained, a closed system that generated its own weather. When he picked up Fozzie's prop box and launched into impressions, wearing hats as John Wayne, as a sea captain, as a British gentleman, the bit was genuinely funny. But it was funny in a way that had nothing to do with the Muppets. They became the audience for his performance, rather than his partners in it. His scenes with Robin the Frog, Kermit's small nephew, are the most telling. Robin tried to engage with Winters calmly and directly, the way a small child might try to reason with a hurricane. Winters played a man possessed by a spirit named Gypsy Chang. Robin nodded along. Two completely different realities occupying the same space. There was no closing number. Unusual for the show and telling. Fans noticed immediately he seemed to not enjoy being there. He left no moment that required the Muppets to be present. The show was built on mutual dependence. Kermit needs the chaos, Animal needs the music, Fozzie needs the hecklers. When a guest star arrives who generates their own complete reality without requiring anyone else, the whole structure quietly collapses around them. Winters didn't ignore the Muppets out of contempt, he simply didn't need them. And that, in the end, was worse. Wild card, Mark Hamill. In 1980, Mark Hamill was Luke Skywalker. Not just famous for Luke Skywalker, he was Luke Skywalker, and the next Star Wars film hadn't even been released yet. He was terrified of staying that way forever. So when Jim Henson asked him what special talents he'd like to highlight, Hamill did a Kermit impression and said, "I've been known to do impressions," and from that single moment, an entire episode was built. The premise? Luke Skywalker crashes through the theater wall looking for Chewbacca. He refuses to perform in a variety show. He's on a mission. So he introduces his cousin, Mark Hamill, who will perform instead. They are visibly the same person. The show never acknowledges this, but there's something else going on in this episode that nobody noticed at the time. Luke is wearing a costume that audiences had never seen before, a khaki uniform, clean, military, unknown. And throughout the episode, one Muppet after another walks up to him and asks, "Who's your tailor? I love that outfit." It was a spoiler. The Bespin uniform from The Empire Strikes Back broadcast months before anyone knew what Bespin was. Nobody in the audience understood why everyone kept commenting on the clothes. The episode ends with the full Star Wars cast and the Muppets singing together, and as they do, a backdrop rises behind them. A Cinderella castle, Disney shooting stars, the whole visual language of a company that hadn't yet bought either of these franchises. Fans who love this episode call it one of the most ingenious meta jokes in television history, a Star Wars icon willingly making himself look ridiculous to prove he was more than one role. Fans who don't love it say Hamill was the only guest star who was least believable as himself, that the cousin bit got old fast, that Mark Hamill, the character, felt like a performance of a person rather than a person. Both groups are right, because Hamill was doing something nobody else ever tried on this show. He was using the Muppets to escape his own mythology. Luke Skywalker played himself so that Mark Hamill could pretend to be someone else. The rule was still there, he just had a different reason for struggling with this. And that is where this list lives, in the gap between struggling and not struggling at all. Because this is not a verdict. The names on the hated side of this list are not failures or frauds, they are some of the most talented performers of their generation. What this list captures is something more specific, 10 different answers to the same question that every guest star on The Muppet Show had to answer the moment they walked through that door. Do you believe the frog is real? The fans quoted in this video disagreed about some of these names. You might disagree too, leave it in the comments. That's the whole point. The Muppets have always been a mirror. What you see in them says as much about you as it does about them.